Hey everybody, my name's Adam Brous,
I'm Scott Moppin.
and this is Solutions from the Multiverse, where we bring you a new solution every week to your happy earballs.
So thanks for joining us, and come by each Tuesday morning. We'll have a new episode ready for you. Here we go. You brought up Oppenheimer. Have you seen Oppenheimer yet?
Yes.
What did you think of Oppenheimer?
I mean, I thought that nobody can edit the director, and so it needed a lot of editing that no one was willing to do. But it was good. I mean, the matter, the acting and everything was really good, but it needed an editor to be like, these 30 minutes are gone. And then it would have been like really, I think it would have been like really one of the best movies. One of the best.
I do
movies.
feel like I need to see it again because I saw it late at night and dozed off a bit at the beginning. So there are chunks that I'm like, but yeah. It's a very adult conversation movie where it's just lots of people having serious conversations in rooms.
What it needs is like, you know how there's like a director's cut for movies that got edited? This needs like an editor's cut, and I would prefer to watch that.
So instead of like the 3.5 hour extended Lord of the Rings, you need like a 1.5 hour truncated Oppenheimer.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Well, not even 1.5 hour. Just like it just needs like it's like a 38 minutes.
Removed. I thought
it's like a small
you were imagining
number.
a 38-minute version of the film. You're like, he shows up, he makes the plutonium, he blows up the bomb, and the end.
No, but I thought it was a very good movie, very important for people to understand that whole the just craziness of that time period. Like Hitler's going to get the bomb. We need to do something. You know, this power is out there. German physicists know about it. Therefore, Hitler could build a bomb. Therefore, we have to build a bomb. It's kind of amazing.
It's wild.
I mean, it's what we need to do with climate change right now. But for some reason, we're just not doing it. Maybe is there a bomb that would blow carbon dioxide apart into oxygen and carbon atoms or something?
I don't feel like that's how bombs work, but maybe my understanding of explosives is rudimentary.
I don't know a bomb. I think what we need is a Manhattan Project for fusion energy. You know, I think that's what
So this is what we do. We now that we've like discovered UFOs and alien beings or whatever, now we go, and you know what else we discovered? They're really close to like clean energy, and they're going to beat us to it. And we're going to really why don't we just come on Earth? Let's do it. Pull together and get clean energy to happen. What about cold fusion?
This could be the solution for the episode, but I mean, here's the deep cut on fusion. I've been following fusion since way before it was cool. Fusion got cool like a year or two ago. I'm like a fusion hipster. Why did the hipster burn his mouth? Because he ate his pizza before it was cool. Like,
no. Oh no.
Yeah, so I've been into fusion. I've been following fusion for like 5-6 years, and it's been a wild ride. A bunch of stuff has happened in fusion. I mean, recently we had ignition, right? We had the first time that a positive amount of energy was created by a fusion reaction, which is like amazing. Granted, they used like lasers. It can't be reused. I mean, it can't be used as a form of energy, but the fact that they theoretically did it was cool. But yeah, basically what people always say about fusion is fusion's 50 years away, and it's been 50 years away for 30 years, right? That's like the old joke, And now people say the same thing, but they say 30 years. Fusion's been 30 years away for 25 years, Like,
do you think that's a matter of them not knowing how difficult the problem is, or it just not getting enough attention and not enough research? Why does that number stay the same?
So that's why I think people. Well, now it's getting better. Now nobody can really say that anymore, because in the past like 5 years, like incredible breakthroughs have happened in plasma physics, in high temperature superconductors, in engineering and AI to do modeling of plasma, like a lot of things, simulations, so they can run iterative simulations very rapidly.
That's the version of AI that I am comfortable with. I am anti-AI in a lot of ways. A lot of like writing and making art, like things that humans excel at. And the idea of like theoretical modeling of imaginary particle, like the structure of that stuff, I'm like, yeah, let AI go after that. That's fine. I don't need to have
you couldn't even get a sentence out about it. I mean, I
don't need to have some super genius spending all their time thinking that through when you could run that through Chat GPT and they're like, here you go, here's the answer.
Right. And I think that's realistically what AI is basically automating boring business stuff that was never going to get done in the first place, or it's being used for like sophisticated, simulations. I think the ChatGPT stuff is more of a sideshow, But anyways, yeah, you're right. There is good ways to use AI and bad ways. But yeah, so fusion is moving really fast because of these breakthroughs. So you can't really say it's 50 years away now. It's clearly, closer now, maybe even only 10 years away. But I'd say something more dramatic, and I think is the deeper cut that I think this should be the narrative on fusion. Fusion has always been $100 billion away.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean?
I don't know why that's so dramatic, I guess. I understand the words you're saying.
Well, because it's not a matter of like how many years, which is a very like amorphous, like, oh, well, how many years is it going to take? Instead, it's like, no, if we spent the money, we would have it. It's like, it costs $100 billion in research funds to make fusion energy. We have spent 25 billion, and therefore as soon as we spend 75 billion, we'll have it.
This is like the question, how many years does it take me to get in really good shape or build a bunch of muscle? And it's like, well, it depends on how much you're exercising
it depends on how much you go to the gym.
It's not a matter of years, it's a matter of other factors. I see what you're saying.
Exactly. And so when they say that, I'm like, that's such a bizarrely amateurish way of thinking about progress, And the Manhattan Project was simply, didn't they say in the movie they spent something like $1 billion? Which $1 billion in 1944 was probably $30 billion. If we put $30 billion tomorrow in the next 3 years into fusion, we would have a fusion. It would be over. We would have it, and we would have unlimited carbon-free, essentially free nuclear energy that would just pump into the grid. You wouldn't need a smart grid. You wouldn't need solar panels. You wouldn't need to have a smart meter on your house. You wouldn't need to do all this crazy stuff. You just dump it into the grid like coal energy, but it would be free and carbon neutral.
Do you put any stock into the idea that like humans develop stuff when they're ready for it? Like maybe we're not ready for fusion yet, and so when we're ready for it, then it will be developed. Like if we had that much power now, we might do something really stupid and blow up the planet immediately.
So I don't believe in that, simply because I feel like some technologies are far more futuristic, were built way earlier. Like think about this, like YouTube. Have you ever like nowadays like sat and maybe you're in a hotel room or something, and then a YouTube video like buffers. And you're like, oh God, But then you turn on the TV and there's like 500 channels of crystal clear HD, like perfect streaming constantly, never buffering, right? TV is like more sophisticated in a way than the internet, but it was developed like 70 years before. So like if human beings developed technology when they deserved it, we would have had buffering TV. You know what I mean? Before we had buffering internet, but we never, we just don't have that. So I feel like technology is or microwaves. Microwaves are totally miraculous, right? And yet we've had them for like 60, 70 years, The microwave is an amazing piece of technology. I mean, amazing. And it vibrates water molecules with light. That's amazing. I just think we don't have fusion because people haven't made it yet.
Okay, so we're not inventing microwaves. We've already done that. We're not trying to figure out new ways to cook stuff. We've already done that. What are you bringing for me today? What do we got today?
Okay. We won't do the fusion.
We can do fusion. I'm not going to be able to do fusion with you.
There's not much more to say about fusion. It's coming. It's coming. We get there faster if we put money towards it. Why don't we do a Manhattan Project for fusion? That is the solution. Let's do that. Let's talk about that. Oppenheimer just came out. People know the Manhattan Project happened. It was to fight World War II and to win. Let's do a climate change Manhattan Project where we put $30 billion towards fusion energy for the next 10
So
years.
what would that look like?
Or three
for the
years,
Manhattan
4
Project,
years.
they got a bunch of super smart scientists and got them all gathered together in one spot and said, "Hey, work on this problem." What would the version of that be 2023 for the climate change?
I think 2023 version would be you could do it a lot easier. You could just say to to startups, universities, and research, Los Alamos labs, all the different labs that are already there, and you could just say, if you propose a system of fusion that is going towards commercial fusion energy, not like, theoretical blah blah blah, ignition that's done with massive lasers that's not reproducible, but if you're truly moving towards commercial fusion, you can apply to the government, and the government will give you like $500 million, just like no strings attached. And then people would be like, great. And they would all go and do that. And everything would be accelerated massively.
Here's what I'm noticing that might be different in this scenario is that in the 1940s, when you're trying to make an atom bomb, it's not like there are private corporations also vying for their own atom bombs. You know what I mean? Like there's no profitable, if you decide to develop your nuclear weapons outside of the government, you're not like, ooh, I could massively profit. But if you have a clean energy source and you develop it and you have proprietary, you know what I mean? Like you're the person who owns the clean energy source. $500 million is chump change. You know what I mean? Like that's not what you're looking at, is an incalculably valuable piece of of kit that's going to make you the richest person of all time forever.
Yeah, but you're also going to once you do a scientific breakthrough, everyone's going to be able to copy.
Well,
so it's not like, so it's
that's why you patent
for
the technology or whatever, and try and
you could
keep it as your own proprietary thing.
So maybe there'd be that string of well, who cares? I mean, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to be like crying myself to sleep if someone got rich saving the entire planet.
Sure. No,
change. You know what I mean? I think whoever does that, man or woman, they just deserve as many Lamborghinis as
I'm
they
okay
want.
with that.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, let them dive around and swim in their Scrooge McDuck vault all day. But I'm just saying, how do you get that person, and not just that person, but the top 10 of that person on the planet into the same room working on the same thing together, instead of working in their own labs competing against each other, which is what it feels like now is the situation.
Well, they could compete against each other. I mean, I think we could take that 30 billion and sprinkle it over, 15 projects or 25 projects, rather than, because you have 30 billion, 30 projects, each one gets $1 billion. That's a lot, right? So I think it's better, Also, I think right now there's like if you look at the fusion energy that's out there, there's like ones that are supported like by Bill Gates, and there's ones that are supported. There's one in Canada. There's a couple there's like two in England. England is very innovative with fusion energy and other energy stuff. They're very, very interested in doing that. And then there's one here in Silicon Valley. And they all use really different ways of getting energy out of fusion. It's really cool how creative it is, because there's so many different ways to kind of like skin the cat with fusion. But like, what projects aren't getting done because they're like the next lower, thing on the food chain? Give them $100 million. Even if you give them $100 million or to $500 million and it doesn't work out, they will still grow everyone involved in that company will like learn, will like use the technology, will be fusion physicists and engineers and scientists, so that when there is an industry starting where we need to build 50 commercial, fusion power plants all over the world, there's the people who are trained, like treated as like a, even if it doesn't work, it still is training the people, pulling in supply chain into fusion, I just think that would be fantastic. Fusion Manhattan Project. It wouldn't run the same way as the actual Manhattan Project, because you don't need to build it out of nothing. There could be a few projects that you build out of nothing. Maybe there's 2 or 3 that would go from nothing to full scale with that money. But there's a lot of projects you could just give money to.
So let's say let's say that happens. Let's say we get the Manhattan Project. They've developed fusion now, like clean energy, cold fusion that we can use, and we are I guess the U.S. government. What do we do with that?
Well, the government wouldn't own it. Probably whatever corporation invented it
Okay.
would own it.
So what do they do with that?
But that's
what do
fine.
we now? What's the next step now?
They
that
build
it
power
exists?
plants. They build power plants.
So you make power plants to kind of overtake the current power plants.
Yeah.
And
that's what you do. You just go and build power plants.
Okay. And then that can help provide.
And then there's electricity. Now you have free.
So we have free electricity.
Literally
yeah.
free. Basically,
so then
free.
we would
yeah,
expect
so
that would
cheap.
probably, like, if electricity is free and now gasoline costs money, we would expect that accelerates the adoption of electric vehicle
electrification of everything. Well, not even vehicles. Vehicles don't really matter. It's all vehicles are only like 4% of the carbon of the atmosphere. Okay. So,
but factories,
so what matters, like planes are even more. Planes are more than cars. So actually what we really need is high-speed rail, electrified high-speed rail.
Do we, or are we now able to have electric planes? You know what I mean? Like,
the electric planes don't really work because the batteries are too heavy for the energy density that you need to fly.
But that was in a pre-fusion world. We've just invented clean energy. We should be able to.
But it's just electricity. It's just electricity. So you still need to like store. You can't put a fusion reactor on a plane. No. They're huge. Fusion reactors are at least, they're big.
You must be mistaken. I saw a really tiny one, and it was in the middle of a man's chest. He was wearing a robot suit, flying around fighting aliens.
Yeah.
You might be mistaken about this, but.
Are you talking about Frying Pan Man? Oh no, Iron Man.
That's correct. Yeah,
not like iron, like
different.
Iron clothes.
I'm talking about washer dryer man, of course.
Washer dryer man,
combo washer dryer man.
Those are bad. Don't get a combo.
I'm not going to.
Thanks. Don't get a double. They don't wash very well. They don't dry.
New solution.
Well.
Don't get a combo washer dryer.
No, get washer dryer. Dedicated solutions.
Yeah, but. So a fusion reactor would be big, like it's as big as a building, or what are we talking about?
Yeah, it would be like a big, because fusion. So there's two. Well, okay,
but it's got to follow
most
the
fusion
same.
Creates heat.
Like computers used to be big as a building, and then now they fit in your pocket. Like, is that trajectory?
So that's actually the trajectory for fission nuclear reactors right now. So there are these new nuclear reactors that are.
All right, hold on. I have to be a dum-dum. Explain to me what's the difference between fission and fusion again?
Oh yeah, sorry. So
one of them's pulling atoms apart, one of them's smushing them together, right?
Yeah. So fission takes a big atom, usually uranium, which is like 235 nuclei or 235 protons put together, and it shoots little small particles at it and hits it, neutrons. I think you hit it with neutrons and it breaks apart the big unstable atom, and breaking that apart, that's like Oppenheimer. That's like the
boom.
The boom.
Yeah, gotcha.
So fission is when you take little atoms, hydrogen, and you pressurize them so much together, like you push them so much together that they actually overcome their repulsion of each other and bind together into helium, into two atom. And that releases energy, because when the energy is actually neutrinos, because when you are neutrons, because you take an isotope of hydrogen that has two neutrons and you hit them together and the neutrons blast off. And when those neutrons blast off, it's like a huge amount of energy, because that's what's called the strong force. That's the strongest force in the universe, is the force that binds the nucleus together. So when you whack them together and you blast off those neutrons, it creates like, I don't know how many times more energy, but basically it's like if you have like a canister of hydrogen, like a little one the size of a water bottle.
Yeah.
If you could get the fusion energy of that whole water bottle, it would charge like hundreds of thousands of households for like a year.
I got you.
So it has a ton of energy trapped inside of those atoms that you're releasing with fusion. In the Oppenheimer movie, they talk about the fusion bomb.
Yeah.
So the fusion bomb is where you put that isotope of hydrogen compressed in a sphere, and you wrap around it a fission explosion. Okay. So you actually have a bomb that sets off a bigger bomb. So you have the fission is so much energy released inwards towards the hydrogen that then the hydrogen has a fusion reaction that
releases outward
even more
and then
energy,
splits the atoms around it, and then kaboom.
doesn't split, combines the atoms.
Oh,
So the fusion bomb, which is terrifying.
but you said the
and
fusion
exists,
was surrounded
fusion
by
bombs.
a fission.
Yeah, there's a fission bomb with a fusion canister of fuel in the center.
And fusion is the one that smushes them together, but then
Fission is the one that blows them apart.
explodes, and then the fission
So
around
you use the fission explosion to cause the fusion explosion, and the fusion explosion is way bigger than the fission explosion.
How am I going to edit
more powerful.
This is ridiculous.
Fusion is more powerful than fission. Fusion
gosh.
is much, much more powerful than fission. So they are making smaller nuclear reactors. They won't fit in your pocket. They do. They already put them in nuclear submarines. That's what a nuclear submarine. It's a fission reactor.
Or suitcase. I hear suitcase nuke when I watch
you could do a
TV
yeah,
and
if
movies.
you do a bomb, yeah. But the problem is with a bomb, you're just trying to create the chain reaction and have it creating an explosion.
Right.
But in a power plant, you can't actually get electricity out of fission directly. All you get is heat. And then you have to turn that heat into electricity.
Don't tell me we're just turning it, we're using it to heat water and spin a turbine.
That's what it does.
Are you kidding me?
That's what it does.
Is that what it's really still doing? That's what we do with nuclear reactors. We're like, we use nuclear power to
steam is coming
boil water. Woo! Oh
Yeah,
my
that's
gosh.
right.
There's
So
got to be
actually-
a more direct way to transmit that energy.
So there is a fusion. One of the most promising fusion technologies goes directly from fusion to electricity. Because fusion actually creates so fusion uses plasma. So when you heat up the hydrogen, when you press it together and you heat it up so that it gets so energetic that it does fusion, it actually becomes plasma, and plasma creates a magnetic field. And so there's a form of fusion that actually, what it does is it doesn't boil water. It just creates a burst of plasma.
Yeah.
And a little bit of fusion.
Yeah.
And when it does that, it creates this huge magnetic field around it. And they actually harness that magnetic field to directly drive current.
And we don't have to boil water?
And you don't have to boil water.
All right, I'm on board with that one. That's
cool
my
one.
fusion.
It's
I like
cool
the plasma one.
Yeah,
Do that. Because it is so depressing that we're just using these space age technologies to boil water like a pot on a campfire. and harness the energy from the evaporating water up at the top of it. Like it just seems that just seems like such a ridiculous way to do it. I don't know. It's like putting a Porsche engine in a car built out of sticks or something. What are you doing?
That's called Helion energy. Helion, and that's one of the ones supported by like Silicon Valley and like maybe Bill Gates or Jeff Bezos is kind of behind it. But the cool thing about that is that they don't have to build all that infrastructure of like boiling water. They can just be running this sort of fusion. It looks like a big tube, and they just blast fusion towards the center. And when it hits the center, it creates this big plasma for like a second, and then that drives the current, and they just wrap it in coils of metal, and then that current drives through that current through the fusion.
That's what decades of sci-fi movies have taught me to expect.
Yes.
I want tubes with glowing stuff and metal coils wrapped around. That's exactly what I want. I don't want a big tank of water and a fan at the top. I want tubes and I want glowing cores. That's what I need.
Helion energy is for you then, because it's pink, because fusion is pink.
Perfect.
So when you do fusion,
fusion is pink?
Yeah, hydrogen plasma is pink. So their brand is pink, and their orbs are pink. They glow pink when they run. It's pretty cool.
Cool.
Yeah, it's cool.
I'm down for that.
But yeah, there's other ones too that are cool. But yeah, if we just had we definitely need what we need is a World War II level armament against climate change.
There. Glad you continued talking.
World War II level armament against climate change, and part of that should be the same amount of money that we spent on the Manhattan Project should be spent on a fusion Manhattan Project.
In today's dollars.
Yeah, in today's dollars. It's just like, I don't know, it'd be like 30 billion or something. So for example, Helion Energy, so this is one of these major ones. They raised $500 million in a Series E, right? So that's like when we were talking about $500 million, that's a significant chunk of change. This is a major company that's had 4 rounds of funding, and their 4th round of funding or 5th round of funding was $500 million. If the government was coming in just like giving that stuff away, that'd be awesome, because then they'd just have double the money, or they'd have, Helion's really cool. They're really cool.
Okay, so wait, it's not a matter of the limitations on this aren't like time or needing to invent. We just need to put money into it. If we put money into it, we can crack it. Is what you're saying.
Yeah. Okay. So here's something you're gonna love, Scott, because you were talking about steampunk, right? Steampunk fusion.
Sure.
Okay. There's a company. It's one of the best fusion companies.
Steampunk is actually what I should call people that run those regular nuclear reactors right now, because all they're doing is heating up water. No. I'll be like, you guys are a bunch of steampunks.
No, you're gonna love this. General Fusion is a Canadian fusion company in Vancouver, British Columbia, and they use steam engines to make the fusion.
Man, I'm going to jump on there just like our last episode. I'm going on a general strike from General Fusion. No, thank you very much. Just keep your water tanks and your steam out of it.
Yeah.
If you're going to do something futuristic, do something futuristic. What are we doing?
They call them hydraulic rams, but they're just steam pistons. They're just steam-powered pistons. And the steam-powered pistons are what they all shoot at once, and they all punch inwards, and they all blast and pressurize the hydrogen, super hyper pressurized, and that drives the fusion. That's what causes the fusion. Is these steam engines?
It's wild.
Steampunk fusion. Yeah, and when you look at it, it looks like a big like the spider in Wild Wild West. You know that Will Smith movie, The Spider. It looks just like that. It has these tubes sticking out of it.
Oh my goodness!
No, you're gonna be more of you're gonna like more Helion energy.
Yes,
Helion energy was like a stealth mode for a long time, and if you were following fusion like me for a long time, you're like, whoa, Helion energy, what are they doing? And then when they came out and explained it, it was like, whoa, this is really cool. So here, Commonwealth Fusion is another major one. It's an American one. That's like the MIT one. And they have $2 billion. They've raised $2 billion total. So throw them another billion, you know. The other option is we do have these SMRs, these small modular reactors, which are like tubes that are like the size of they're like 30 feet tall. So they're like the size of like a small building.
Okay.
And you bury them underground in like series. You build them you build like a big cement thing, and you put them in series, and then they're each one of them is like a nuclear fission. It's a fission reactor that generates heat, and then you put them in series, and then all that heat goes and boils water and runs a fan. but they're easy to they're way cheaper to create, way cheaper to put into place. They're safer because they're like super modern and like have all the redundancies and stuff and safety devices and whatever. And but this is the next thing for nuclear energy is along with, I mean, fusion's a little further away, but these SMRs are a big deal.
Is there something better we could boil in this process? Like maybe it's the water part that's so boring. Like if we boiled clam chowder, or if we had like giant tanks of soup, and then you could heat the soup up, and then you put more in, and you give the hot soup away.
You could give the hot soup away.
I mean, I'm being a jerk, but I have had zero ideas for how to make it. I mean, if I was in charge, my idea would be like, take the Tour de France and like give them all VR helmets and then put them on like stationary bikes and use that to generate energy or something.
Hey, that's a Scott's Great Idea show right there.
Okay,
I like that. It can be called the Tour de Force instead of the Tour de France.
And they just like they're having their race, but only virtually. Like it bonks into each other the same way it would on normal, but the spinning wheels are actually producing energy for.
Maybe
someone.
That's what the Peloton actually is secretly.
They're all
maybe you plug in the Peloton and actually
Peloton
it's sending
network.
electricity back in, and that's how Peloton is making money, is they're selling the Peloton energy back to the grid.
They have buried like a giant Peloton battery under South Dakota, and it's slowly charging up, and when it's like full, they're going to be like, all right, now it's time to unveil stage 2. Here it is.
Stage 2. What else could we have Manhattan projects for?
I think we
need. Be cool. What if we had Manhattan projects running all the time? Like X Prizes, X Prizes. Why don't we have Manhattan projects?
How do you define Manhattan projecting something? Like what is included in that term for you?
The government. It was actually, we had it for COVID. The Project Warp Speed was a Manhattan project for. Okay.
But what are the key functions, or what are the components of that?
The government, basically the public through the government,
yeah,
is provides overwhelming support for the rapidest possible invention and deployment of a new technology.
Okay. So like it's about government oomph goes in and helps it, speeds up the development of a thing that would have happened otherwise
in 10 years or 30 years. Instead, we do it in like 2.
The moon landing is an example of a I guess a post.
I guess we call it a moonshot too. You could call it a Manhattan Project or a moonshot.
But that sort of idea, like the government, it puts its hand on the scales in a very purposeful way.
Yeah,
to try to shift it.
Yeah, we say the government, but I would just say like the public.
Well, sure, yeah. I mean,
like the public is like, we know this technology could exist. Therefore, we as the demos, as the people, are going to use our incredible power. Like the people are so powerful. Like even just a teeny fraction of our power can completely revolutionize anything.
Yeah.
But it very rarely is like applied so directly.
Okay. So we would do that. Yeah, I think that would be great for getting clean energy. The problem I see, obviously, as a skeptic, is that the people at the current keys of power of the industry, the energy industry right now, have the ear of the people in the government. And as soon as this idea spins up to like, why don't we get our might behind making clean energy, there'd be a lot of voices be like, why don't you not do that? Why don't you do exactly the opposite? And maybe what we need is a stronger dependence on oil. How about that?
Yeah.
That seems like it'd be hard to combat.
Yeah.
Which is why having it start up in private industry and show promise.
I mean, we're actually really lucky.
Has to be kind of.
We're really lucky that in the last like 15 or 20. Actually, I people love to like be like critical of big tech, but like if everybody like lost their privacy, but then Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates like create fusion energy, like it was worth it. You know what I mean? Like seriously, because we're talking about the whole planet.
Maybe for you don't have a lot of skeletons in your closet, but some people might.
True.
Some people might be like, nah, man, keep your free energy. I need to keep my secret.
Yeah.
So what do? We get a Manhattan Project for clean fusion. We get a Manhattan
There is no dirty fusion, so it's just fusion, yeah. And it doesn't even have to be cold fusion. You can do hot fusion.
Can we do a Manhattan Project for overhauling the education system? Please?
Yeah, the problem is the education system doesn't have like there's no technology that like would somehow there's no like clear and away thing that would just like fix everything. I mean,
I'm just trying to think of what are the
I have a way for fixing education, and I'm currently almost done with the book on it. And when it comes out, I'll do an episode and we'll talk about the book.
Yeah.
So then people can buy the book and support me and solutions a little bit. But yeah, so there is a solution to education, and the book's almost done.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I look forward to it. That sounds
it's not
good.
when it's in pre-release. Maybe we'll even do it just to get the buzz going. But
I'm down.
But yeah, but it's not a technological solution. It's just a policy change.
It's policy change. So the Manhattan Project would not be necessarily a solution for every type of problem, but ones that we think technology can come in and swoop and clean up.
It's like we know this technology exists, or even it's a chance that exists. Because if there's a 50-50 chance that a technology exists that's going to be really great, you might as well spend like $25 billion. And if it works out, Jesus, and then it's worth the money. If it doesn't,
back in the 60s, when they're like, okay, the task is get from here to the moon, it's clearly a task that needs to be solved by technological advancements, like that sort of thing. Right. They're like, dump a bunch of money in, put the smart scientist in, have everybody cracking this nut at the same time, and we'll figure it out. And that's the type of thing that, clean energy, like climate change is what comes to mind as the imminent existential threat to everyone indiscriminately. Like you could be as rich as you want. It's probably you're not going to escape this.
And if you go in and say, and the other thing is the oil people will say, let's not do that. Well, the oil people might say, hey, you're giving away $1 billion grants. We'll spin up a fusion branch. Good. Yeah. I mean, in a way, now you've paid the baddies to change their tune and actually try to create like,
which I'm fine with too. I mean, if you have to drag companies into modern time, like car companies
kicking and screaming.
had to be kind of dragged into the making electric vehicles market by companies that popped up and they're like, no, we're just only making electric vehicles and we're selling them, by the way, like, and they're like, okay, fine, there's a market. I guess we'll try and take it. But, I'm for that progress, even if it comes about that backwards sort of way.
Yeah. And so, but I also, though, the renewable people will be against giving out free money to fusion because they'll say, no, spend that money on a smart grid, spend that money on more solar, spend that money on solar tax breaks, spend that money on offshore wind farms. And, but I think the answer to those people that you have to say is, look, bless your guys' hearts, but like, but it's just not going to, I mean, it would work if like a million things went right. But the cool thing about fusion is only one thing has to go right. You just have to figure out how to make sustainable fusion reactions that are net positive energy. That's it. If you figure that out, you can just boil water, right? You're back to steampunk. You can just boil water, run these whatever treadmills. No, not treadmills. Fans, turbines, and then just pump the electricity into our existing grid, and everything just continues to operate as normal.
Well, I was going to say that's how you get the renewables people on board. You're like, oh, you like hydropower? Well, guess what? We're using our energy to heat water. That's hydro. Oh, you like wind power? Well, guess what? That water turns into steam and turns turbines. That's kind of like wind power. I got you both in our come join our nuclear camp. And they're like, I guess I will.
Climate change. We're kind of doing a bunch of. I'm kind of worried about the climate. I think I've been thinking about the climate a lot.
Yeah, it's sort of a problem. That you and I alone are mostly powerless to stop, and that's the sucky part about this is that individuals are mostly powerless to stop this thing that's going to affect everybody all at once.
Yeah, I have a chapter in my book, The Future of Good, where I talk about whether we should try to fight the climate crisis or not. And so I did a bunch of research into what really is the danger of the climate crisis. So I went and asked like some scientists and some engineers and some political people. And I asked them like, what's really the issue? Because what you hear in the news is like, oh, the oceans are going to rise 2 feet. And you kind of look around and you're like, what the hell does that mean? Like you kind of have this vague notion that like, some waterfront properties will need sunk pumps. That's like the worst.
Did they all say the worst thing is using plastic straws? Because we all figured out how to eliminate those real fast and use these terrible
that was the biggest
cardboard alternatives that are awful.
Well, no, what they said is refugees. That's the thing that really will hit in the next. Even it's already hitting now. It's already like the Syrian refugee crisis. Was not, I mean, it was precipitated by the Syrian civil war, but it was vastly exacerbated, like 10x exacerbated because of Syria had the biggest drought it had ever experienced in history, like 3 years before. And so all these farmers got pushed off their land because all their land died because there was no water. They all moved into the cities, and then the civil war happened. So all those people were totally already displaced, and then they had to actually like flee because the crisis of the civil war. So when people talk about the Syrian civil war, the Syrian refugee crisis, which was years ago, that was a climate refugee crisis. Yeah. It's already happening. Yeah. But it's not framed
It's not
that
like
way.
We're making this area so hot that everyone has to move out and become refugees. It's because, this area now can't produce enough food. There's scarcity. Scarcity makes people fight over what is there. Fighting makes wars. Wars makes refugees. And now we have a big problem.
And everything about climate change creates refugees. So for example, when you say the oceans rise, well, what that really means is that sure, it rises 2 feet or whatever, a meter on average. But what really happens is there's a big storm once a year or once every 2-3 years. And the big storm causes these huge storm surges that create flooding. And here's the kicker. The flooding of ocean water goes into freshwater water tables, and it pollutes all that fresh water and turns it into salty water that you can't drink.
Yeah.
So the problem with the oceans rising is a big storm destroying millions and billions of gallons of fresh water, meaning whole populations of coastal people. They don't necessarily just have to leave because of the flooding. The flooding they might be able to overcome. They have to leave because all their water is turned brackish. It's salty.
Yeah.
And so they have to leave. And so you create this, there could be a hurricane, like a Hurricane Katrina style thing, or like a Hurricane Ida, like a New York hurricane, that could literally just like make it so that, we don't just rebuild. Like literally everyone would have to leave because there'd be no water.
Well, and this is a rolling snowball that's getting bigger and bigger because more effects that are happening, the more people that need to go to fewer and fewer places that are going to be unaffected. And gradually everywhere's affected and everyone needs to go to the nowhere that exists.
Like Wisconsin. Well, I mean, there'll be parts of the world that are unaffected, like, North Pacific Northwest is fine. It's a great place to be for climate change. But guess what? Everyone in Arizona, New Mexico, and, Texas are going to be like looking for somewhere to go that's safe. Well, guess what? The Pacific Northwest can't survive the way it's built if tomorrow 20 million refugees come from Arizona and New Mexico and Southern California and Texas. It would entirely collapse. And so that's what's actually the danger of climate change, which will happen in the very near term. Like not, our grandkids or like even our kids, us in the next 10 years. And there's already been the Syrian refugee crisis. In the next 10 years, there will be multiple more mass migrations like that. Mass migrations caused by water shortages, caused by fights over scarce resources, caused by droughts, caused by fires. The Hawaiian fires that just happened in Maui. Yeah. I haven't seen anyone say this is caused by climate change. It is. The world is getting windier because of climate change. More wind is an effect of climate change because wind is just energy in the atmosphere. And so when you increase the amount of energy, i.e. heat in the atmosphere, you get more wind. And so when in Hawaii, someone says wind blew down a transformer and started a fire, and then wind blew that fire all over and destroyed Lahaina and destroyed a huge swath of Maui, guess what? That's the climate crisis. And people are not registering that all these things that are happening are all the climate crisis.
They're all the same thing.
Yeah, they all have a root cause.
They're symptoms of the same disease,
And no one wants to say it. Everyone wants to act like, no, that's just a fire. It's just a tragedy, unrelated. Syrian crisis, that was just political. Oh, no big deal. Or it's a big deal, but it's like, but it's not related to the climate. It's like,
now...
It's related to the climate crisis. It is the climate crisis.
Now, you had actually just gotten back from Maui a couple weeks ago.
I know.
Are you familiar with the spot that got hit?
Lahaina? Yes, Lahaina, the West Coast.
Had you just been there?
Like what? Yes, we bought earrings. We bought ice cream. We walked around Lahaina, and now the whole city is burned to the ground.
Yeah.
Gone.
That is so wild.
Wiped off the map by fires caused by winds, caused by climate change. But no one's saying it. I haven't seen any news article say, this is climate change. It's bizarre. It's bizarre. Even supposedly like left-wing news. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I didn't read all the news about it, but I read 3 or 4 articles. No one said, it doesn't, climate change.
Yeah, it's they're not focusing on that at all. It's on
I can't believe they're not focusing on it. This is crazy.
I've seen calls for them to be like, hey guys, don't come as tourists right now to Maui because all the space and hotel rooms and stuff need to be to be used for the people who are displaced out of their homes. And we need to kind of
displacement
buckle in as a community right now and not worry about all this outside nonsense.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah,
refugees, man. That's the real thing that's gonna make the world.
I saw the Hawaii thing, and I knew you had just been there. I was like, I thought about you because I was like, wow, that was just right where you were.
Missed it. Yeah, we were exactly there. Lahaina was beautiful. I mean, needed some protected bike lanes, and it needed some electric bikes. But maybe they could rebuild with electric bikes. They should, get rid of the cars.
It'll be the new electric bike capital.
Yeah, it should. It'd be great. Great weather. Anyways, doom and gloom here, everybody. Yeah, Manhattan Project for Fusion Energy.
It's the theme, right? Manhattan Project is all about doom and gloom. Oppenheimer is not a feel-good movie. It's a good movie, but not a feel-good movie for sure. And we're trying to figure out what we could use that sort of setup for. And I think we got a few ideas.
Yeah,
I'm down.
Do it. And
I mean, they're not going to call me.
Scott doesn't want steampunk fusion. He wants glowing orbs.
I want glowing orbs, and I want bicyclists with VR helmets. That's what I want in the future for me.
There's a fusion for everyone. You can have the glowing orbs with helium, or with helion.
Thank you.
And I can have steampunk with general fusion. And Commonwealth Fusion, which is the MIT spin-off company in Massachusetts, they use high temperature superconductors to use like the most powerful magnets in the world to control and like pressurize the fusion. That's totally different. That's a whole nother thing.
We're gonna have to start dressing differently because of our different like fusion camps. Like I'm gonna have to wear shiny clothes and like really futuristic stuff. You're gonna have to figure out a way to make top hats and monocles look cool.
With like a gear, like a
you might have
valve
to do
coming out of a top hat. Like
instead of sunglasses, you wear some sort of welder's goggles.
There's another form of fusion that's in Britain where they actually currently in their tests they've been using gunpowder to shoot a copper a disc the size of like a penny, and then that hits a little pellet of hydrogen and ignites the fusion.
Interesting.
And in the future, that little disc will be actually shot with a particle accelerator, like a magnetic accelerator.
Not like a weirdo with a rifle and gunpowder.
Yeah. Currently, they use this huge gunpowder cannon to shoot it for their testing or whatever. So yeah,
you can deep on fusion. I had never.
I know all of it. I know all of it. Oh, I know everything about fusion. I mean, I don't know everything about it, but I've been following it very carefully. I know every project that's out there. Yeah, I like the steampunk one though. The steam engine one is funny, or the gunpowder. Whatever, it's cool.
Thanks everyone for listening to Fusions from the Multiverse. Yes. My goodness.
Oh yeah.
Well, this is fascinating. I feel like I've learned a lot more than I've contributed in this one because I was at like square one with fusion. I really was, but I like the idea of using this and using the government power to try to like accelerate it because we really do need a different energy source. The old school ones have been failing us and are making things worse. It's not good,
We can do it. We can all do it.
Believe in us. Let's do it.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
See you next time.
Bye-bye. Bye.
We should do some ad situations too.
Ads.
Nope, that's not how we should start our ads.
So I want to tell you about a podcast that I've been listening to that we connected with. Fire Breathing Kittens.
Fire Breathing Kittens.
Yes, easy to remember. This is it's not exactly Dungeons and Dragons. I shouldn't say that. It's tabletop gaming, fantasy gaming.
Mm-hmm.
Dungeons and Dragons is just one tabletop gaming rule set, but it's all in a universe, which is called Fire Breathing Kittens. It's like a guild of adventurers.
Okay.
And so they can swap in and out people. And it's just like you're hanging around at the Fire Breathing Kittens headquarters and a letter arrives that says you're invited to something,
That's
and
fun.
an adventure begins.
Yeah.
And then they do it for, it's an hour and a half or 2 hours. And then
they play like a campaign.
And they play a small campaign, a little event in the campaign. And it wraps up and it's super fun. And the people playing it are like professional voice actors. So you can you're getting this like awesome story. It's like awesome adventure.
Yeah.
Because they're just like breaking character and in character and like making choices and rolling dice. And you get exposure to all these different tabletop rule sets.
And you get to listen to them play through this game and be entertaining while they're doing it.
It's so fun.
Awesome.
Each episode is self-contained. And I've been listening to them while I work out and like when I walk around.
That sounds excellent.
Yeah.
All right.
So
Fire Breathing Kittens.
I just thought we'd like let everybody know about that.
I love it.
Cool.
Check them out.
All right.
All right.